My audio is good. You can hear me good?
Yeah. All right, everybody. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, whatever the hell, whenever the hell you're listening to this. We're going to do a live edition today of In Liberty and Health. Make sure you check out Axe and Sledge Supplements back there, LMNT. I wish I had my box here with me because my guest today shares the same passion for the electrolytes as I do. So today I have returning with me for the third time, and I'm super, super excited to talk to him today. The guy who dared to tell keto people that they shouldn't just guzzle ribeyes, butter in their coffee, and eat the fattiest brisket they can get a hold of, that he even dared to tell these people that you could have cream of rice. Today, I have the legendary Rob Goodwin with me. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing well. You could skip the legendary part. Nobody's buying that horse shit. Okay. I know you're trying to, really create some, epic television here, but let's not lose our heads. Okay.
Well, you are with me, so that kind of does bring the quality of the room down, dude.
You're exactly right.
Yeah. Well,
Let's
you know what they say, birds with feathers.
Let's see if we can get this one kicked off of YouTube as well.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Unfortunately, I found out that isn't quite a very difficult task to do. I've had quite a few of them. Let's see. We got Desired for Iron. Our brother in health here, Chris Crowley, if I remember correctly. What's good, champions?
What up, Chris?
It's good to see him here. I'm glad that we got at least one person here with us. You called 9, so we'll see if we get up there.
Well, I knew Chris would be here, and I told my mother that she should probably tune in. So we'll see if she actually gets on board or not. So we might just be down to one listener today.
I know we got 2. Awesome. What's up, Natalie? Nice. So anyways, you've kind of gone under a transformation recently. I've been listening to your podcast, and hopefully all my listeners have as well, because I know I've been relentlessly plugging your stuff on Twitter and everywhere else. Kind of lay that out and what's been going on for you lately, man.
Yeah. It's funny because when I finally made the decision to retire from competitive bodybuilding, and I've always tried to qualify that remark with the fact that everybody watching this, if you have any desire to change your body and you're taking steps to do so by doing some resistance training, doing some cardiovascular work, the things that you put in your mouth, the goal is to, achieve a certain level of health and aesthetic, then you're a bodybuilder. And a lot of people were afraid to jump on board with what I was doing on the outset because they thought it was just for these, freak show bodybuilders like you see on the cover of Flex magazine and all this stuff, these Mr. Olympia types. And it's just not the case. But I also knew that in this world of competitive bodybuilding, it wasn't, let's be honest. In that world, it's not all just about health, right? Bodybuilding is not about health. It's about, like any other sport or something where you endeavor to, be on top of a podium and impressing a panel of judges that you have won the day. Then you need to do whatever it takes to achieve that form. And in bodybuilding, it's achieving a certain aesthetic. That's not always healthy. I can tell you that the last 6-8 weeks of a contest prep for me had very little to do with health. You're depleted, you're getting your hormones are getting the shit kicked out of them. I mean, it's not a pretty sight, but that is all in order to achieve a certain aesthetic to impress a panel of judges while you're standing in front of 1,000 people in your underwear. So once I moved away from that, then the criteria changed a little bit. And I always knew in the back of my mind that, once I did finally retire, I wasn't going to let my foot off the gas. I was just going to take a different road. And that road for me now is also maintaining as much of a level of aesthetic that I'm pleased with. I mean, I'm not, going to ever turn into some fat slob. But as long as I'm able to maintain roughly 10% body fat year round and also be able to perform at a high level and feel great. And when I get my blood work done, the numbers are great. And I sleep like a baby, I wake refreshed, and I have a real focus on longevity because even though I can't believe this, I'll be 54 in November, and, before you know it, I'll be turning 60. And, I never want to feel my age, and I still don't. I probably feel like I'm 30 now, maybe younger in the terms of the way my body reacts. I don't look it above the neck, but from the neck down, my goal is to be able to perform at a high level. So it's not just the aesthetic anymore. It's also about performance, longevity, and health. So what I'm doing now, I truly believe in my heart of heart, is what's going to take me down that road and achieve that goal. And it's a day-to-day goal.
Right. Absolutely. And, I kind of had a little bit of a setback, and I haven't talked about it too much, but I used to be hitting the 405 for anywhere from 5 to 10 reps. twice a week. And then eventually got to the point I'm like, holy shit, like it hurts to get out of the freaking car. And I'll be 28 in November. Right.
Right.
So clearly I had to shift my focus as well. So now I've actually moved my training down to 4 days a week. And I've kind of taken some different considerations moving forward into the future. But so I guess we should move on to kind of what does your training look like? Because before, the last time you were on, I remember you talking about kind of the blood and guts, all out to failure kind of training.
Yeah.
It seems like you've kind of winded back a little bit and also kind of do perhaps a little bit more aerobic work. If you let's go ahead and kind of lay that out for everybody.
You would definitely be wrong, as you most often are. No, it's funny. It's a perfect question. And when I look back at some of the stuff that I'm putting on my podcast recently, my YouTube videos, the things I'm throwing out there, you might think that. But then, when I sit down in the evening, I'm contemplating my day, what I'm doing, what the next day is going to bring, and what I can do to, be the best I can be. But also, hopefully that resonates with people who have put their faith in me as a coach or who follow me or whatever. So honestly, if I had to break down some of the core tenets of what I truly believe in my heart and soul is the best approach to achieve what I'm trying to do right now, I would definitely say, and this may surprise you, that a high intensity training approach might be even more suitable for me now than it was when I was competing, because then it was all about an aesthetic. Now it's all about the preservation of lean muscle tissue. Because we all know as we age, let's face it, by the time you hit 40, it's going to be going the other direction. Right. So the goal at that point is to stave that off the very, very best way you can. And the best way to do that, whether you're competing or just trying to be the best version of yourself you can be, is to lift heavy weight, get ample amounts of protein and make sure your recovery's on point. And I've sort of, even though I'm throwing in some high intensity interval work once a week, I don't think you need more. My other workouts have kind of really pushed back to that Arthur Jones, Mike Mentzer, Dorian Yates style, where I believe if you're spending 30, 40 minutes in the gym and you're taking strategic sets to failure with good form and high intensity, and you're not in that gym for an hour, hour and a half, I think it's a safer workout than if you were putting yourself through the grinder for an hour in a high volume approach. I'd rather do a couple high intensity pre-exhaust supersets, take 2 sets to total failure of 8 to 12 reps, and then get on with my day. And then because I want to, work the metabolic machinery as well, 1 day a week, I may throw in a high intensity interval workout, which may be combined with whatever cardiovascular I'm doing, which in the last 4 or 5 months has been rucking almost exclusively. So maybe on a Friday or a Saturday, I'll put 60 pounds on my back in the rucksack and I'll go off on a 3-mile ruck, but along the course, maybe every quarter mile, I'll pull that thing off and use it as a resistance tool. And I might do, 20 lunges, 15 heavy squats. I might do 25 ruck push-ups. I might do some ruck swings like a kettlebell swing, jack the heart rate, work that metabolic machinery, throw the thing back on, and then go another quarter mile and repeat that. So that's kind of what my cardio Metcon thing has been looking like these days. And I can tell you that the results have been tremendous. No longer am I putting this massive emphasis on being the biggest, baddest, pumped, striated walking vein that you can imagine. And it's been kind of refreshing. I would never trade those years that I did that for anything. But now it's, I'm enjoying this new path of pushing for optimal health, longevity, and still being a freak, no matter what I do. So that's the way my training is looking these days. So I, as well, am down to a 4-day split. And, but it's oftentimes a push-pull legs or still breaking up body parts, but it's sort of the Dorian Yates method that was adopted from Mike Mentzer, which was in turn adopted from Arthur Jones, where I might do a set of 70, 80% of my 1 rep max. And then it's get my head straight, make sure the right music's on, tune out the whole fucking world, and then give 2 sets to all out brutal failure with good form. And I'm fortunate that I have a couple workout partners that are fantastic. So they make sure that nothing's falling on my head and killing me and I'm not getting trapped under barbells. So that's the way I've been training lately. And I've coupled that with quite a modification in my nutrition as well. And everything's working out really, really well.
Oh, hell yeah. Well, what's funny is that some people kind of poo-poo the one set to failure approach. And I know that's not what you're advocating for 100%. But when you have this mentality of, okay, I'm going to do a couple warm-up sets, some pre-exhaust, and then this last set, it's fucking balls to the walls. I completely agree that you're going to have that mindset of, this is everything I got. I'm leaving nothing left on the table. So I'm going to fucking hammer it as hard as I can to make sure I get the biggest bang for my buck. And when you look at like a more voluminous approach where you're doing 5 sets of 15 or 3 sets of 20 or something like that, you can almost have more room for slack, right? Because it's like, I'm going to decrease the weight so much where I can kind of pussyfoot around, versus where, once again, if you're going to do a drop set and you're really going to hit it, then it's like, this is it. And then until the next workout.
Well, yeah, if somebody says I gave it everything I had in an hour workout, my immediate reply is, no, you didn't.
Right.
You couldn't give it everything you have and keep sustaining those efforts over and over again for the course of an hour and 15-minute workout. It's just not going to happen. And if you look at strength training and hypertrophy through a logical, rational lens, it only stands to reason that if you push your muscles to the ultimate brink of what they can handle, and then slightly beyond that as a defense mechanism, they're going to grow and respond as a defense mechanism to be prepared for whatever insanity you throw at it the next time. So it's still, to me, the most logical, rational approach to training, and it's always worked the best for me. And for my clients that actually want to walk down that road, it's worked fantastic for them too. But the caveat to that is, and a lot of people just don't understand this, even seasoned weightlifters don't understand this, most people have no real comprehension of what true failure is. They really don't, because you've got to go full on freaking Dorian Yates, David Goggins, and who the hell ever else, to where you get to that point where if somebody, and Mike Mentzer, the great Mike Mentzer, who I had the absolute honor and privilege of doing 3 consultations with back in the 90s, because that's what he used to do. He would have this little ad in the back of Muscle and Fitness where you could call Mike Mentzer, pay the man the money, and he would give you 3 consultations. And it was fantastic because he said, in his very intellectual tone, now, if I put a fucking shotgun in your mouth, and if you don't get one more rep, I'm going to blow the back of your skull up against that rack over there. Do you understand? Yes, sir. Or if I had that same shotgun in your child's mouth and I was going to spray their brains all over the gym floor, could you get one more? Yes, sir. I mean, that sounds harsh and almost insane, but he had to paint a picture. And then the one time I got to actually train with him, the other 2 were on the telephone, and you're standing there with a legend bodybuilder and he's telling you to kill yourself, you will kill yourself. You will take yourself to the point where I'm either going to finish this rep and impress this man, or I will die under this weight. And then, those are the experiences that made me truly understand what failure was, because I didn't know up to that point. And then the other example is when I got to train with John Perillo, who's also a legend bodybuilding coach. And when you arrived to his camp that you paid $600 for, the first thing he had you do was a 100 rep belt squat. And he would, look at you and gauge what kind of weight you should do. And not because I was, a big 235 pound 20 something. When I did that, he strapped 4 100-pound plates between my legs on this harness belt thing and told me to go. And then as you would completely fail, and he would be the one that would judge if you truly failed or not, he would then strip a plate. I kind of vaguely remember being at rep roughly 70, and I still had 100 pounds on me, and I blacked out a few times. I woke up somewhere around rep 90 with 2 giant bodybuilders under each arm, force repping me through the last 10, to which they stripped the last 100-pound plate off. I fell off the platform into a heap into the fetal position and laid there shaking for 45 minutes. That was, again, failure, and I understood what that meant, but I had to see it in real time. I had to be pushed to that point, and I truly had to understand what that meant. Now, I'm not saying to you 9 people listening right now that that's the level you need to take yourself to, but at least get to that point of true concentric failure and experiment with that to where there's nothing you can do to complete that last rep. And I mean nothing. And then I flirt a lot with high intensity techniques like cluster sets, rest pause sets, pre-exhaust supersets. The pre-exhaust superset, that was a Mike Mentzer thing. You pre-exhaust the muscle in an isolation movement, and then without any rest whatsoever, you move towards the equivalent compound movement. And he was a big believer in that. Nothing ripped me apart more than those, pre-exhaust sets. And I still do that to this day. And, I see a real benefit from doing that. And I don't see a benefit in a 54-year-old guy or a 44-year-old guy or even a 33-year-old guy spending an hour and a half cherry picking through a gym doing 100 sets just to get a pump, which, if we know anything about exercise science, doesn't do shit. Okay. The pump means nothing. It's about really tearing down that tissue to achieve the desired result through, the healing and defense mechanism and the growth of that muscle under duress. So I'm a true believer. I always have been. And when I sat down and sort of reevaluated where I was taking my fitness and nutrition life from here on out in my fourth quarter of my life, it really made the most sense to me to continue down that path, but then sprinkle other elements in with that and form a synergy of programming that would, benefit every aspect of my life onward into the future.
Mm-hmm. Right. And the one thing I always liked about training to failure, and I probably about 6 months ago started incorporating it again, was the fact that it's always objective, right? Because it's to the point that you will no longer be able to move that weight.
For
right?
sure.
You're done. You're tapped.
It takes a special person. I really believe that. It takes many years ago, I got involved in doing some cycling. I really loved it because it sucked. It was hard. It was brutal. It hurt. And there were the people that could push themselves beyond that lactate threshold of the quad burns and the lungs are on fire. Your heart rate's up literally 190 and you feel like you're about to fucking die and explode. And then to be able to keep pushing towards that on some super inhuman climb up some fucking mountain. It took different individuals then. I've seen it take different individuals in the gym, endurance sports, strength sports, whatever. There's two types of people. It's the type of person that's willing to push beyond boundaries to a level that most people would never understand. And then there are the people that are just looking to accomplish the minimum because they're not willing to go through that level of discomfort. And anything in life that's worth doing is going to involve a level of discomfort in order to get the reward. And I think that's just, wound in our DNA.
Yeah, so I was actually on a podcast last night with my buddy Tommy, who's an absolutely great dude. But we were kind of talking about this, where fitness really is kind of one of the ultimate delays in gratification, because you're never going to see your muscle growing in real time, right? You could see over years and years and years, especially as you get closer to your genetic potential.
Sure.
You no longer are going to have the same newbie gains. So you just really have to trust the process. And it's hard for me sometimes, and I think everybody really. You're going to see that ad for testosterone or test boosters and say, this is good. The one thing you're missing from training. And oftentimes, you take it, you spend hundreds of dollars, and then it's like, oh, I didn't get anything about that. Well, it's because, once again, the work that you're avoiding by taking the supplement is essentially going to be the work that you need to do. And you're going to need that patience as well to delay the gratification to get the physique and the desired outcome that you want.
Yeah, that one more thing you need is not testosterone. It's not some supplement. It's one more fucking rep that you didn't do because it hurt. It's 2 more hours of sleep that you didn't get because partying or drinking or doing whatever. And it's making sure that you put the right foods in your mouth that are going to create the most anabolic environment that you can in order to achieve the results. And I personally believe that that is a hyper carnivore kind of diet. And you may be surprised to hear that from me because oddly, I kind of, got all the controversy thrown on me because I said, oh yeah, you can be in ketosis, you can do a ketogenic diet, you can be animal-based, but you can also have your carbs at the right place at the right time as a performance tool and as an aesthetic a complementary aesthetic tool in your toolbox. Mm-hmm. And now that those days are gone for me, those carbohydrate influxes are fewer and far between. Now I go strictly by feel. And I believe that as an older athlete, that a carnivore style diet, or what I refer to by definition, a hyper carnivore diet, is kind of where I'm at now. And let me explain why, because it won't make any sense. But once I decided to retire full time and I finally said, nail in the coffin, I'm done. And now it's a new path, it's a new way. I just kind of let myself go intuitively, meaning, how do I want to eat? What do I want to eat? What seems right? What is my brain wired to tell my body from literally going down this primal ancestral path for so many years now. Now that I've put my posing trunks up on the shelf and I've decided to do this for other reasons, how do I want to subsist as a human being? And how do I feel I'm going to thrive the most from that? And I just immediately gravitated towards lots of red meat, lots of eggs. I've got my own chickens. And it just seemed to make so much sense to me, still using carbohydrates on occasion, but only for feel. I responded to somebody in our Facebook group a day or two ago. We were talking about these refeeds. And I said, yes, these can work and these may be beneficial according to the individual. And I do these on occasion. However, I've probably only done this 3 times in the last month. And I was on those days where I felt like my body's telling me it might need something here. So I would add in a little bit of carbohydrate as a pre-workout tool. Still to this day, I tell people around training, simple. And, but these days, as I've sort of made that conversion back into a little bit more strict animal-based diet, I'm listening to my body, and my body is responding very, very positively with what I'm putting in it. And that, if you look at that on paper, it's more of a hypercarnivore diet. And I keep saying hypercarnivore because that's the definition of an animal or mammal that takes in a minimum of their food intake from animal-based sources, 70%. I'm probably over 70%. So, but I do leave a little room in there to, have a little bit of organic fruit from my freaking raspberry bushes, or have a little cream of rice 30 minutes before a brutal leg day. And that's fine because I know that those carbs are going to be gone. There's not going to be any detrimental effect to my inflammatory response, how I feel, cognitive issues and things like that. But now that I'm not competing anymore, and it's not, I have to look fucking amazing in the mirror every minute of the day or I'm going to lose my mind. Now that I'm not that person anymore, intuitively, I'm just gravitating, because I think I've rewired myself over the last 15 years to crave that and to thrive off that. And I see it happening with so many other people that's just the path I'm down now. And even so far to the point where I've launched a new, nutrition program literally this morning. It's the final evolution of this tier 1 teams thing I've been doing. And the final evolution of that is the nutrition element, which, make no mistake, is a hyper carnivore approach.
Right. Yeah. And I like how you focus the carbohydrates around workouts, because so many keto people tend to think that if you have, a blueberry, then you're going to die. But
keto people, it's funny. I was talking to Ted Naiman about it. He's like, aren't you almost embarrassed to have that, that name associated? I'm like, well, kinda, but we've been brushing on this. It's what the outside influences have done. Do you remember back in the day when paleo was the big thing? And then, big corporations got on board. They figured out there was money to be made. And then everything was freaking paleo.
You can make a paleo donut.
We can put it in a package. And then keto happened. And I was doing keto and nobody freaking heard of it or cared or gave a shit. Yeah. And then the next thing that was in 2015 is when the keto wave just went tidal wave. It went fucking bonkers. And I was quietly doing it amongst myself and a few friends. And I literally remember almost overnight waking up and having dozens of emails in an inbox saying, help me with this, keto master. I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? I'm just back here eating steak and eggs and everybody's losing their minds all of a sudden. And then you find out very quickly that they're reaching out for help because of all the zealotry and the dogma out there of what is keto. And everybody to this day still thinks it's about chugging fat. And that's just not the case. It's still about finding the right, combination of macronutrients that suit your body the best. I respond very well to a higher protein approach. So I'm sticking to roughly 40% of my intake is protein, roughly. And fat, because of the 9 calories per gram, is somewhere in the 50 to 60 percentile range, sometimes a little higher. And then carbohydrates may go from 2% of my intake for the day to 5 or 6% of my intake for the day. Still extremely low carb. That's something I have to keep saying. Oh yeah, you're the guy that advocates, eating a bucket of rice before you work out, right? I'm like, no. I may have 20 grams of something super clean 20 minutes before I train, and then I'm back on freaking ground beef and pastured eggs. So that I'm not that guy, but I'm also going to be the one to tell you that there are different paths to take to getting the results that you're looking for. And you don't have to be this one size fits all horse shit that's driving everybody insane. No wonder nobody sticks to it. They have a method that works for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I guess kind of teetering on there. If somebody came up to you and said, all right, it's 2022, I see Catalina Crunch, all these keto cookies sitting on the shelf. Rob, what the hell do I do? Should I eat, a bunch of fat snacks and ribeyes to lose weight and to optimize performance, and then have, a whole bucket of rice or a whole bunch of bread before I work out? What would you tell that person who came up to you and asked that?
Well, I would probably have a lot of fun with that person by completely lying to them for 10 minutes just to see what their response is. But no, it's something that I said back in 2015 when I sort of wrote out these like handful of commandments that I used for all my consulting clients that wanted to do a ketogenic diet properly or a carnivore diet properly. And I said, if the very first thing you do is to start looking for keto versions of the shit that got you into this mess in the first place, you're going to fail, period. And that's what I would say. I would say, why are you looking for, ketogenic or carnivore versions of the shit that got you into this mess in the first place? I don't eat carnivore snacks. I'm not eating anything out of a box or a bag. I'm literally just eating meat, eggs, fish, poultry. I do use some animal-based dairy. I'll do some raw milk when I can find it. I'll do some full-fat Greek yogurt, and I might, don't lose your mind, I might put some blueberries in it. I might put some raspberries or strawberries in it, and I'll do butter, and I'll do beef tallow to cook in because I think it tastes awesome. But I also have an emphasis on my protein intake, and, I'm not as zealot about it. And there's times I'll have vegetables because there's 2 or 3 vegetables that I really like. I'm not a vegetable guy, but there are 2 or 3 that I really like. And my wife knows the ones I really like. So it may be dinner and there may be the big hunk of meat sitting there, but she may say, hey, I made some sauteed cabbage and butter and garlic. Like, cool, I'll have some. I'm not going to be one of these zealots that's like, no, that's not carnivore. Meat and salt only, please. That's insane. I think that's insane. This is a crazy world we live in. If you can just stay away from being inundated by the massive amount of shit that's at every checkout of every store you walk into. I mean, you're never going to not be tempted, and it's going to be super hard. And if I'm working with a client and they tell me, oh, fuck, I had peas last night, I'm going to be like, okay, and, I'm not going to yell at you for eating some fucking organic peas, but I'm going to yell at you. I would yell at you more if you ate the keto cookie or the carnivore snacks or whatever shit, ultra processed bullshit out there that you're consuming. Carnivore is about an animal-based diet. It's not a culinary tour. I think it's tasty and satisfying, and I enjoy it, and it works great for me. For me, if it doesn't work great for you, I'm not going to browbeat you about it and tell you that you're doing it wrong. I'm going to say, hey, man, if what you're doing works for you, cool. Keep doing it. I applaud that. Run with that shit. This is what I do. And if you're out there and you see what I do and you are intrigued by that, and there's something kind of tugging at you that says that appeals to me or the idea appeals to me, then let's join together and let's play with that for a while. And if you decide that's not your gig, we'll dump it and we'll go our separate ways and we'll still be friends. But that's just the way I look at this shit. Everybody out there has got something to sell. I've got something to sell. I sell coaching. That's what I do. But if I don't deliver results, you're not going to stick around very long. So I do have an ulterior motive to make you successful or I'm screwed. Mm-hmm. What irritates me out there, and I want to get off on a real quick rant. I don't mean any disrespect, but I need to use this to make sort of an analogy, to give an example. I think everybody's familiar with Paul Saladino, the carnivore MD, whatever. I like that guy. I think now, though, like one thing about him, he's business partners with the Liver King. We all know that guy. And Paul Saladino and the Liver King are brilliant businessmen, first and foremost. That's what these guys excel at. And now Paul Saladino says, no more keto for me, no more carnivore diet for me. Now it's animal-based, and you should all eat fruit. And you should also all chug honey like there's no tomorrow. And he went from taking in 100 grams of carbs to 200 grams of carbs. And then it's 300 grams of fructose and honey. And now some days it's 400, but that's okay because that won't make you fat and that's not going to hurt you. Well, it may not hurt you, Paul, but don't you think that might be a little bit excessive? And my theory with this is it may not perfectly resonate with him either, but if he doesn't always separate himself from the herd and make it to where like he has got this one thing and everybody should come to my house because I've got the best, my party's the best, and these parties are lame and you don't want to go there anymore. I think he makes these adjustments because he's either ADHD and can't focus on any one thing for very long, or he thinks, okay, carnivore has gotten crazy popular. The waters are getting, muddied a little bit. So I need to separate myself once again and market myself as having this new approach. And you see a lot of people out there in the carnivore space all gravitating towards just eating tons of fruit with reckless abandon. And somebody even asked me, so you said, you hashtag this animal base. Does that mean you're eating meat, fruit, and honey? I'm like, I eat a lot of meat. I might have a handful of blueberries in my Greek yogurt, or I might pick a strawberry off my bush. I might use a little bit of raw honey 15 minutes before a really hard workout session, but it still only equates to a couple percentage points of my total caloric intake for the day. So no, I think people get misled with that. You know as well as I do that people gravitate towards a ketogenic diet or a carnivore diet because they want to alleviate some form of metabolic distress. That's usually where people come from. It's true. And then they decide, oh, this also has helped me with my performance, or, oh, this also has helped with this, or whatever. But so people coming into this world trying to alleviate some sort of metabolic distress or inflammatory response, and a carnivore diet is exceptional for that. A properly structured ketogenic diet is very good for that. Right. Now, all of a sudden, the guy that was telling them to eat this way and stave off these metabolic issues is now telling you to pound 400 grams of fructose down your throat. That could cause more problems to a lot of people than good. So everybody has to be very, very leery of what these gurus are constantly like pumping out. I mean, come on. Let's face it. Do we all think that Liver King is 100% natural? Jesus Christ. Come on.
Yeah, dude, he's so full of shit when he says he's natty. But, on top of that, it's funny when you hear people talk about, oh, well, you need to eat a candy bar or something like that because your blood sugar got low. That speaks to your point, right? You just need a little bit of carbohydrate. And guess what? You'll spike your blood sugar and then you'll get that performance boost that you're looking for. Or if you consume some carbohydrates post-training, if you're completely depleted because you just beat the living shit out of yourself, then all that's going to be sucked up for glucose and you're not going to get this huge insulin spike. You'll be good afterwards. But It's not like you're sitting here eating an entire pizza. You're eating some strategic carbohydrates. You're going to have an orange or something small to just, once again, replenish glycogen stores. It's not the purpose of hedonic pleasure. It's for performance purposes. And that's 100%. Kind of the way I've always looked at your diet.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly what I do. And that's precisely the way I look at it even now. Even though those interventions of carbohydrate are more limited than they used to be when I was a competitive bodybuilder, I still 100% believe that they can be beneficial for some people. I work with people that if they put 10 grams of carbs in their body, they completely fall apart. Those people exist. Whether Paul Saladino wants to believe it or not, they exist. And those people do better without the carbohydrate intervention. I have some people that can take in 100 grams of rice and honey and an hour and a half later be in ketosis again. I mean, everybody's a little different. Yeah. So what I'm doing now works best seemingly for me. And then I make little, adjustments or interruptions in that as needed based on how I feel and what my body's telling me to do. But I've been doing this shit, for 30 years I've been training. And for 20 of those, there's been a strong emphasis on how I fuel my body in order to maximize that training. So I know myself very, very well. And I literally know if I'm in ketosis. I know if I've bumped out. I don't give a shit, but I can tell and I know what path to travel to feel amazing from the time I wake up at 3:30 a.m. every day until the time I fall asleep at 8 p.m. every night, and still be great in the gym, great with my clients, a great husband, a great father, a great grandfather, whatever the case may be. This is the path that I travel to be that human being. And if you want to come in and come onto my island of misfit toys and play in my reindeer games with me, I would love that sort of tribal spirit, and we can, go lockstep, arm in arm down this road and work together. Okay. If you try it and it's not for you, then go find what works for you. Be free. Don't let me talk you out of it. I just hate that one size fits all zealotry that is out there in the industry and the space today. And if anything I can do to just be the antithesis of that, then I feel like I'm doing my job. But like I said, I'm very carnivore-ish. I go in and out of ketosis all day long. I probably never consume more than 5% of my intake from carbohydrate, but I'll be the last guy to ever tell you, no, you shouldn't have some, rice and chicken before you train and do heavy legs today. So it's pretty simple, but also, as you know, the plan is not hard. Mm-hmm. It's implementing the plan that's difficult for a lot of people because of the distractions in this world and the culture we live in. We've never lived in a lazier, fatter, weaker culture than we do right now.
Absolutely.
So if you can, if I can, find that one, cow that jumps the fence and leaves the herd and wants to, join up with me and my little sub herd of crazy people that doing this shit that works well, then bring it, and we'll let the rest of the herd go their way. We don't need them.
Yeah. Well, I always liked and appreciated your non-dogmatic approach. And this is kind of where I started to fall out of love with some of the carnivore gurus, because it became too dogmatic. Like, you'll see these little shorts of Paul Saladino talking about how these vegetables are going to kill you. It's like, all right, well, at a certain point, you got to realize the fucking dosage is, if you have a handful of fucking Brussels sprouts, it's not going to kill you, dude. There may be some people that may have a bad reaction to it, but like, what I tend to find is that when you take these incredibly hard-line rules around food, then that kind of leads to binge, right? At least I know it did for me, where as soon as I got just a little bit of sugar, fuck, let's go. I'm already one meal off the plate. Might as well eat absolutely everything in fucking sight. It's dangerous for some people. Like you're saying, there are some people who
your audio is kind of breaking up, dude.
Oh, man. Can you still hear me all right?
Yeah, you were on this great rant, and I was getting really excited, and then you fell into the tin can, and then I lost the second half.
Oh my God. What a shame. What a shame.
It looked like it was really good. I mean, you had this passion on your face, started to work up a little sweat. I'm like, whatever he's saying, it must be fucking awesome.
Yeah, well, my shorts are getting a little bit shorter as I was talking. But I just feel like some of the flexible dieting guys kind of lose sight of the fact that there are metabolically broken people who can't handle some stuff, and maybe you need to take a little bit more time and attention for them.
Sure.
And the carnivore zealots should also kind of think, okay, well, maybe not everybody's going to be able to eat just meat, salt, and water for the rest of their life. I feel like you understand this perfectly, because you and I, the first time we were on, you talked about, hey, they brought over a sweet potato and asked if we wanted some butter and brown sugar on it. And I was like, well, yeah, of course. And I do the same fucking thing. Yeah. But when you tell people, hey, if you have that, you're going to be done. Like, that just creates hardline rules for people where they're going to eventually break and they're going to fucking binge, rather than just saying, okay, well, hey, tonight it's my anniversary. I'm going to go have one piece of cake with my wife or whoever. We're going to enjoy it. And then guess what? Tomorrow I'm going to go do some high intensity interval training. I'm going to beat myself up a little bit, but it's okay, right? This is a planned hedonic, just we're going to enjoy ourselves, but don't let that get fucking carried away.
Right. And like Saladino took that point and I think went off the deep end with it when he's talking about the Hadzu tribe or whatever, or the Hadza tribe, coming across a honeycomb, bees and honey, and they're like eating it and they just devour this thing and taking however many hundreds of grams of glucose from this honeycomb. Well, yeah, but at the same time, they're not inundated with shit food at every turn, and every screen that they watch and every piece of literature they open and every checkout aisle is, forcing candy and sweets and sugar and chips and soda and garbage on them. So of course, if they stumble onto one of these little sweet treasures, they're going to enjoy that, then they're going to be on their way again, looking to kill something and bring it back and to subsist on properly. So that, I get that. So in our culture, because it's so available, We just have to be able to reel that back a little bit and dial it in and understand that it should. I don't believe in planned cheat days necessarily, unless it is like you talked about. It's my anniversary this weekend.
It's quality of life.
Quality of life stuff. My daughter loves to bake, and every once in a while she'll bake something just decadent and amazing. And, I'll try a sliver of it. Is it going to kill me? Hell no. Now, there are people out there that if they have that same sliver of cake are going to go off the damn deep end. They're going to go off into a binge. Something in their wiring, unfortunately, just puts them in a bad place, and they can't pull back from that. And alcoholics never complain about the kind of liquor they're drinking as long as they're getting liquor. Right. It's not about a this or that. It's about I can either tolerate this food stuffs or I can't. And for some people who are just metabolically deranged, one of those cheap meals might take them off the deep end, and you might find them in an alley somewhere, peddling the rest of their wares in order to go get a fix at the Krispy Kreme. So we can't allow that to happen. Right. So the one thing I like about coaching people is they know that there may be times where I need to talk them off the ledge, and I'm always happy to do that. I can't tell you how many times it's been even 8:00 at night on a Saturday, and I'll get some message. I'll read it first, and if it's no big deal, I'll wait till a little later if me and my wife are watching a movie or something. But there are times when I'll pause that movie and say, hey, I'm communicating with a client. I talk them off the ledge. We walk through the reasons why they want to do this. And I remind them that this is probably not setting you up for something that's going to be good, and you're going to regret this. And we had this talk, and let's do this instead, or let's go down this road. And that seems to work very, very well for people, because most people in our culture now never have somebody to tell them what they need to hear. Mm-hmm. People are always telling everyone what they want to hear, or they're just waiting for their turn to talk. There's no real substance in the conversation. So when you hire a coach, you need that coach to, with lots of love, tell you, hey, asshole, we've talked about this.
Right.
Don't eat that. Don't do this, or don't do that. Or why are you skipping so many workouts? Or why are you not doing your cardio? And when they give me some bullshit reason, I'm going to say, so when you decided to hire me, you did that knowing that you know way more than me. So what the hell was the point? Well, if you don't think you know way more than me, then let me give you some advice, and let me help you walk through this path and tell you where you need to go in order to achieve success. You either trust a coach or you don't. And if you work with me for a week and you don't trust what I say, then fire my ass and go find one that you like. We'll still be friends. I don't care. And the thing that drives me the most, now I'm just getting off on this weird rant, but clients will hire me, and one of the first things I say to them in conversation is, listen, I want you to bother me. I want you to message me. And I do my very best to get back to them fairly immediately. Sometimes it's an hour, sometimes it's 1 minute. But the more you communicate with me, the better understanding I have of where your headspace is, and the better I will be in tune to be able to help you pull you out of these dark places that you might be into. And it makes the world of difference just having somebody that's listening, that's going to shoot you straight. And that's what a good coach does. You may have the workouts, you may have the macros, you may have the diet, but the real value in this is knowing that, well, shit, what do I do about this? This is what I'm thinking. What about that? What about this? Oh, let me text my coach. Boom, there's the answer. Okay, great. That's worth its weight in gold. And people need to understand that that's the relationship, is, having somebody that you trust that's going to tell you how it truly is, and not just going to pat you on the back and tell you how wonderful you are all the time.
Yeah, well, this kind of gets to a larger meta conversation I want to have, because I enjoy talking to ye old geezers like yourself about some stuff that's kind of going on in the world right now. One thing that was really, really good for me, I felt, but I didn't quite understand at the time. I started working in Chevrolet dealerships about 10 years ago now. And I remember when I worked at a small dealer, probably about 45 minutes away from where I live now, maybe a little bit less. I was making minimum wage, and I was changing oil and working on cars for the same you would make at fucking McDonald's. And I remember how hard those guys were on me. Oh, you're not paid to do, you're paid, or you're not paid to think, you're paid to do. You do what I tell you when I tell you to do it. And they just whoop my ass relentlessly every day. But I kind of look back at that now 10 years later and say, holy shit, now I realize why that was necessary, because I see some of the other kids I work with, and they're undisciplined. They sit down, they pout, and then when you give them something to do, they don't want to do it. And I realized that they were just instilling the discipline that I needed at that time into me so that way I could go on and be successful. I'm guessing you probably feel relatively similar to them, that like, hey, sometimes you do need a little bit of brotherly, fatherly love to kick you in the ass and tell you, hey, you're fucking up. You need to get back on track.
100%. I mean, we live in a weak, lazy, entitled culture. And I don't want to sound like the old man that's telling kids to get off his lawn, but that's absolutely true. You know, these days, the old geezer that I am, as you so eloquently expressed, you know, I'm somewhere between Sam Elliott in Roadhouse and Clint Eastwood in Gran Torino. I'm some sort of a hybrid between those two guys. So yeah, I'm a little set in my ways. But when you raise 4 children, 3 of them into adulthood, and you know you have a grandchild, and you have people that work with you and work for you, and you see the culture shift over time to this lazy, weak, entitled culture. And I think the best thing you can do for people is to give them a swift kick in the ass and show them the error of their ways, not just give them a puppy and some crayons and a coloring book and a safe space to hide in. And because that would be the worst thing you could possibly do for someone. You know, alleviating student loans, that's just another way to say, you know, you can just rely on big daddy government to be your baby daddy and provide for you. And you have to do nothing but sit there and in your own pompousness and wait for everyone to rescue you. And I was always taught there's no one going to rescue you. You have to rescue yourself. You know, I grew up in the 80s, man. I'm a free range human. We rode in the back of pickup trucks. You know, we rode our bikes without our helmets. We went face first down the slide. I mean, that we were hard. We were outside until it was dark, and we would come home and be hosed off by our mothers, thrown in, gobble something shitty down, and go to bed and do it the next day. And nobody was coming to help us. Nobody was coming to rescue us. So that we need to reinstill that mentality in our youth, because it's dying. And the culture, I don't know that there is a solution to it other than just leading the way the best you can locally in your sphere of influence. So I try to do that. I mean, if I can help someone, I'm going to help them, period. But what I expect in return is for them to learn. And the old adage, you know, you can teach a man to fish, or you can fish for him. And I think teaching that work ethic is the key. And when I work with clients, it's about, there is no motivation. There's only dedication and discipline. You know, I don't want to hear that you're not motivated today. Well, fine. I'm not motivated today either, but I have a dedicated course of action that I am on. And there are times when the last thing I want to do is roll out of bed and work out at 4 a.m, or do this on a Saturday morning, or record a podcast at 11 at night, or work on this blog post, or do whatever all these workouts and programming for my clients. But I do it because I made a commitment to helping others. And when you're in the role of helping other people, it's about not only motivating them and pushing them to be the best that they can be, but it's also pointing out where there's a weakness and something that they need to have their asses kicked about. You know, we need to take more wooden spatulas and beat more little kids' asses, and to teach them that there is going to be consequences to actions out there. Yeah, you eat pizza every day, you're going to get diabetes and you're going to get fat. Nobody's going to come rescue you from that. So put down the pizza and back slowly away from it, chubby, and get your ass to fucking work. Something like that.
Right. Yeah. And it kind of highlights also the mentality that I think you and I both have when it kind of comes to training and some of the things that we do in our lives, is that you burn the boats, right? As soon as you get on the island, you burn the boats, because you know there's no turning back. You got to give it your absolute all in everything you do. And you have to be willing to say that, hey, even though I burn the boats, sometimes I still may fucking die on this hill right here because I gave it my all. And guess what? That sometimes still isn't good enough, but you still have to have that perspective of, I'm going to keep going anyways. And I'm going to be so fucking relentless that no matter what, I'm going to get my result and what I want, no matter what.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, my grandson is never going to say, Papa just sat back and didn't do anything, So that, to me, that's big. I'm always going to try to do whatever I can to help anyone that needs a leg up. But at the same time, I'm going to teach them that I'm not going to lift you up there. I'm going to show you how to climb up there. And it may hurt, and you may fall, and you may get banged up and bruised, but you'll become way stronger as a result. And that's what I do anyway. I'm about beating the piss out of people to make them stronger, to grow back a better human being, and to be able to accept whatever challenge they're faced with or that's set in their path. It goes beyond just the physical. So much of this is mental. So much of this is life lessons we can learn. And since I am a grumpy old man that's been down this road many, many years and done so many things, it's my responsibility to give those experiences to others, that they may be able to carry that on and build a stronger generation that's ahead of us and get us away from these crazy, weak, entitled millennial types that think that everybody's always going to throw the rope ladder down from the helicopter and cart them away to freaking, rainbow and unicorn land. That's just not the way the world works. And I think there's a little bit of a groundswell. I mean, if you're living through this current administration, I don't want to get too deep on that, but I get it. We're building back better. Anyway, that
was a good Joe Biden impression.
they redefined the word recession.
Right.
They redefined the word better, obviously. Mm-hmm. But I think if it did anything positive, if it's doing anything positive, it's waking some people up to where, change begins here in my home and extends out into my community and extends out even beyond that. And I have to do whatever it takes to keep pushing a positive message of forward. And it's not about relying on everybody else to take care of us.
Right. And kind of like I was saying earlier, you do kind of have to burn the boats, but it's also, you should always understand that, as you said earlier, nobody's coming to save you, and that you have to pull your own self up sometimes. And yeah, you're going to need help occasionally, maybe from some outside sources or something like that, as in your family, not the government, but you may need a hand up from people who you can depend on. But that's kind of what we need to get back to, is having this culture of people who are willing to delay gratification so that way they could see a better tomorrow. And once again, that kind of highlights the point that we were talking about earlier, where bodybuilding is kind of that delaying of gratification.
Oh, sure.
And yeah. I think that's definitely what we need to push forward. And I think hopefully, well, I know you, and hopefully myself are kind of two leaders in this realm that are kind of encouraging people to say, hey, don't eat that fucking donut today. But if you get shredded and you hit those, those numbers that you want to see on the bar, then maybe one day when you're out, you could have the 2 fingers of whiskey and enjoy a piece of cheesecake with that person that you love,
Damn right. Or whiskey now. No, that later. Wait a minute. What time is it? I don't know. But yeah, I get that. And that all makes sense to me. So, sometimes you feel like you're fighting a losing battle, but, and the fact remains, I'll get this huge swell of new clients. And I think I might have even mentioned this in the first time we spoke. Mm-hmm. I know if I get 10 clients, sadly, 1 might stick.
Wow.
1. And that's kind of being generous. Mm-hmm. It might be more accurate to say 10 out of 100. And that's very sad, but I'm also not going to tell someone that it's always okay to skip your workouts, to not, eat what you're supposed to eat, get the recovery you're supposed to get, do this, do that. It's really telling of where we're at now. When you can, if I told you you could take $1 bill, and if you give me that dollar in 1 year, I'll give you $1 million back. You'd give me that dollar. And you would be very patient over the next year, knowing that a year from now, you're going to get back $1 million, that return on your investment. What drives me insane is when I tell somebody who needs to lose 50 pounds or 80 pounds or 100 pounds, or they're terribly metabolically broken, I say to them, the good news is you can take 10 years of neglect and abuse, and we can turn it all around, and we can turn you into the best genetic version of yourself in a year. Mm-hmm. You wouldn't be surprised, but others out there listening may be surprised to hear how many people are like, a year? Are you kidding me? I need to be like lean, fit, and amazing in 30 days. I've got a wedding to go to, or a class reunion, or this and that. And they get discouraged and pissed at me. And I'm like, I have to hold back from losing my freaking mind, because I'm saying to them, listen, you can take 5, 10, 15, 20 years of neglect and doing things wrong And we can turn the whole damn thing around in a year, maybe less, maybe a year and a half, whatever. Anybody who's not ecstatic with that answer, I don't understand the reality that they're living in. And it's very unfortunate that that's what we have to deal with, is people that don't want to hunker down for months at a time and put everything they have into something that's going to make them the best version of themselves they've ever been. And until they reach a segment of that goal, they won't really understand it. So we've got to have a handful of successes as the months roll on to sort of peel back the curtain a little bit, let them see, I'm getting a taste of what this feels like. My energy is increasing. I'm dropping some weight. I'm sleeping better. I'm not such an asshole to my spouse or my significant other or my kids. And then you start to see these things occur and it just begins to snowball. But it doesn't mean that it's going to be any less work involved as you go down that road. So if you're not expecting to work your ass off, if you're, some people think just by putting their credit card number in my website that they're going to magically lose 20 pounds. What were you thinking? Just because you got the app and you got the program, you can't just sit there. It's not going to do itself. Nothing works until you do. So it's just, it all goes back to, like this. I don't know what to do about the culture we live in, but that's why all I can do is help one person at a time and hope that it resonates to others within their space and then their friend's space and their other space. And social media, just like a gun, you can either protect yourself with it or you can kill somebody with it. Social media is the same thing. You can take something like you and I are doing today, and somebody can click that share button and send it to a friend and send it to another friend and say, hey, check this out. Tell me what you think. And if what these guys are saying resonates with you, then there's another step you can take and maybe we can do this together. And that's the only way we're going to push this thing forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny you spoke about how people kind of want to lose the weight like that. It took you, 5, 10, 15, sometimes even 20 years to put that, 80, 50, 100 pounds on. Why do you expect it to come off in a month? Now, you can improve a lot in a month, but sure. Why don't you look at this as like an investment, right? Where you're going to make an investment in yourself and in your health to better your body composition and better your life. And once again, if you spent 20 years beating the living shit out of yourself for the worse, then you should expect it to take a little bit of time to reverse that out. And right. This can also kind of be applied to the other end where people like myself who have dieted for too long and weren't, as studious as they could have been with their nutrition, where you're just trying to get lean all the time. Hey, maybe you need to stop and maybe you need to eat a little bit more and be careful, get a little bit fluffier, not sloppy, but, put on a little bit of weight for a little bit to kind of repair yourself metabolically. So that way you're in a little bit more of a better position when you want to lean back down and maybe, let's say put muscle on in the future as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a narrow path for sure. It's a very narrow path, and we're always learning. We're always discovering. Never in my 30 years of doing this, today, sitting here this day, I'm convinced that there's so much more involved in body fat reduction than just calories in, calories out. Mm-hmm. To some, they will think that's blasphemy and I've lost my mind, because there was a time where I thought that was 99% of it, energy balance. Well, when you work with the population, the public, and even family and yourself day in and day out, and you dive into the literature and you sort of see where that literature and those studies have gone askew, or whether it's epidemiological, which is all horseshit, and you start to see like corporate interests involved and all the corruption that's within the scientific community and the nutritional science world. And then you start, having conversations with other, people with high academic accolades that are looking at this a little differently and taking you down a different path. And now some of the stuff is starting to make sense. I mean, I've been around people that completely were in compliance and in a deficit, and very, very little happened. And it was until we worked on some hormonal balance that things didn't start to go in the right direction. So there's so much that needs to be learned. There's so much that needs to be experimented with. And I'm not sure we're ever going to come to a complete concrete solution, but I do know that there's a derogatory role that excess carbohydrates play in the body. And nothing will make me believe different. And when you just look at the simple fact that, you and I could live the rest of our lives and thrive and never ingest 1 gram of carbohydrate ever again, that is so telling. Right. I didn't say you can't or you shouldn't. I just said that if you do never ingest another gram of carbohydrate, you can still thrive. So I think that's very, very telling. And now with a lot of the research that's coming out about thermodynamics and open loop thermodynamics and closed loop thermodynamics and how energy is actually transferred and the role that ketones play. And, is protein really equate to 4 calories per gram because of the rate that it burns, and all these different things come into play. So it's, I can work with a client and I can have them in a 700 caloric deficit and things just lock up. And I can make some subtle changes with the division of macros and how we divide things up, or maybe what we exclude or what we include. And all of a sudden things start to happen again. And I see that most by using an animal-based diet that is primarily protein and fat. So, it's fascinating stuff. And unfortunately, I think of all the sciences out there, the world of nutrition science is the most corrupt and the most misunderstood. The great Arthur Jones, many, many years ago, said, in relation to exercise and nutrition science, in his mind, a PhD in that realm just meant piled high and deep in bullshit. And I think there was a lot of truth to that. And because, what we're being told on a regular basis by academia, who is funded by God knows who, that are looking to benefit from the outcome of these studies, I think it's just, once again, just making things even more confusing for people. So having the opportunity to work with people one-on-one and keep turning the knobs on these things and finding what works is very telling. And another example for this, I know this might be a little boring, but I work with competitive physique athletes, bodybuilders, and so on. Myself, I've told the story many times. I did 2 shows back to back. I won my class twice. I completely crushed my show, my national qualifier in 2021. And then a couple of weeks later, I went to nationals. Well, I stayed in that caloric deficit. I went even deeper into that caloric deficit. I got to the point where I was so restricted and so depleted of nutrients that my body literally shut down. So you're going to tell me that it's all about just a caloric deficit? Well, let me go ahead and tell you, I was a 215-pound, mostly muscle bodybuilder. And at 1,100 calories, day after day after day after day, I couldn't drop an ounce. My body said, no, you're not losing another pound. And in fact, there were a couple of days where I teetered up to 216 from 215 on 1,100 calories, meticulously tracked. Only eating like things that it's either this plant or this protein, and that's it. And everything locked down. And then I was working with another guy recently who did 2 back-to-back competitions. And he got down to a very, very low body weight and body fat percentage, did phenomenal at his first show. 2 weeks later, did his second show. He did phenomenal again, but his weight had actually come up, even though we had kept the macros exactly the same, and even went into a deeper deficit on peak week. He hardly lost another pound. And I truly believe that this is through a hormonal sort of shutoff valve that your body says, okay, we're starving here. We're replete of nutrition. We're replete of calories. And we need to turn off the machinery and save this person's life so they don't completely fall apart. So you can't tell me that it's always just about energy balance and how many calories you put and how many calories you expel. I think there's so many more things involved in that. And I've been able to manipulate that a little bit better by using a more animal-based diet with my clients and myself to be able to turn those knobs a little better and sort of get a bird's eye view of what's actually happening physiologically with that person. I don't know if any of that made any sense. It's hard to put into words, but there's so many things at play with these super complex, brilliant human bodies. And everybody's a little different from everybody. It's like I listened to this professor who I really admire, and you'd love him. He gets kicked off of everything. His name's Bart
Nice.
K. His name's Bart K. And a lot of people think he's insane. He's just eccentric, and he tells it like it is. And he talks about that there's only one study on humans regarding nutrition that would ever be accurate, and it will never happen. And he puts it so much better than I ever will, but he says only if you took two identical twins and put one in this controlled environment and put the other in this controlled environment, each brother doesn't even know the other exists, and they're both in their own environments, and both of these environments are 100% controlled. 100%. Everything they touch, everything they eat, everything that they apply to their skin, every bit of visual stimulation, mental stimulation, hot, cold, you name it, it has been meticulously tracked for literally 20, 30, 40 years. Only then would you properly be able to assess outcomes related to those individuals and apply it as a blanket to everyone out there in terms of nutrition intake, macros division, calories, and all these things. And when he said that to me, I was like, that really makes sense, because all these epidemiological studies, which are just sort of willy-nilly thrown out there and poorly executed, and then they come up with some, paper that's published, and then you look to see that Nestle funded the damn thing and it stands to benefit greatly, then you can just chuck all that shit out the window. So we have to take some of it in and really delve into where the funding came from, what actually happened in the study. But if it's just epidemiological, which just means, questions basically given to a field of people that you don't know really exactly if they tracked this properly, if they were honest about this, you'll never really know. I mean, you've seen The Truman Show. You've seen that movie. Basically, that's a study. That's a true study on what's going to happen to a human being. He's been put into a totally controlled environment that's artificial, and everything that he's gone through his life, he's been, given him to produce a desired, entertaining result for the people who are watching him grow up. So that's the only way we were ever going to be able to do this properly. So until that time, which is never going to happen, it would behoove you to work with somebody who's going to meticulously look at what you're doing and take what you say for face value and keep making adjustments until the desired result comes out of that. And whether it's an extreme case like a competitive physique athlete, or if it's just somebody who's trying to get off the pre-diabetes list and drop 25 pounds, the plan may change to a degree. So we have to sift everybody down to this funnel. But once we get to the smallest piece of the funnel, that's when we really got to start breaking up the fine nuances of what they're doing and sort of establish some baselines to what their current situation is. And that's the only way you're going to get true results.
Yeah, I think to your larger point there is you kind of need to do your best to find what works for you and then adjust as necessary. So about over the last year, I've switched my diet more over to 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, and then 60% of calories from fat and then 40% from carbohydrates. But I'm beginning to think maybe it's time to kind of adjust these knobs again and get to something else, because while I enjoy it and I like all the foods I eat, I'm thinking maybe it's just, I got this gut feeling like, all right, I need to make just some kind of change. And I'm thinking probably after the wedding, I've kind of debated this, and I actually would like your opinion on it, and then maybe we'll kind of wrap on this since I got you here to pick your brain. I don't know if maybe I should do a bulk next year, maybe not like the entire year, but kind of run just a concentrated bulk, because I've been just cutting for so long and then doing reverse, maybe like a little bit of a bulk for 6 months, maybe just dedicate a good year to bulking, and then maybe get super shredded for 2024. Or maybe just change up the diet and try to get to a decent body composition and then kind of sit there. So like I said, I'm not quite settled what I want to do. I know I'm pretty dialed in right now, but I'm thinking, like I said, after November, when my wedding is all said and done, maybe try and figure out something to just kind of shift to and focus on that.
No, absolutely. I mean, and it kind of goes back to my other point. I'll tell people, oh, you want to gain mass, if that's the number one most important thing, then you need to be in a bit of I used to say caloric surplus. I'm starting to refrain from that word, because I think we may not be exactly sure how to qualify the term calorie anymore. So I prefer to just refer to it as energy. So you need to be in an energy surplus to a degree. It doesn't have to be great. And you also have to make sure your division of macros is on point. That's going to lend towards the addition and preservation of lean muscle mass. So if I was telling somebody that wanted to gain muscle, I'd say we need to experiment for a few weeks, meticulously track and look at what you're eating. And then if we start to see that you're in a slight energy surplus from that caloric intake and the wheels are turning, then we'll continue down that path and tweak as we go, and then dial back that energy to a degree again once we get to the point where you're trying to get a little bit leaner. I'm doing something really bizarre for me because I've always lived that life. Now I'm like, how can I maintain 10% body fat, keep a good level of quality lean mass on my frame as long as I possibly can before the inevitable loss of muscle through sarcopenia, which is going to occur to every human being. We just want to slow it down. What does that look like for me? And that's what my experiment has been. And the way I've been eating for the last 3-4 months since I've officially retired seems to be working dramatically well for me. And it's one of those things where even though you know what you're doing, you still surprise yourself from time to time.
Sure.
And so, I was the guy that was like, it was all protein because I'm competing and I got to be lean and I got to be pumped and big and muscular all the fucking time or I'm going to lose my mind. So now it's like, okay, my fat intake is like 60%, maybe a little more. My protein intake is 40%, which is a little bit of a flip flop for me. And then my carbohydrate intake is just, I go by feel here and there a little bit, still only 2 to 6% of my total intake most of the time. My training, first thing we talked about, super intense, super heavy to failure, throwing a little bit of metabolic work on occasion. My cardio is 30-45 minutes of heavy rucking. There's no running, there's no gray zone cardio, none of that bullshit. And putting a severe emphasis on those X factor things like rest, sleep, recovery, sunlight, and all these things. And it's really cool when you surprise yourself after being a coach for 30 years as to what is still possible and how little tweaks can have such a massive benefit to the individual. It's just a matter of finding out what's going to serve that individual the best.
Hell yeah, man. All right.
I didn't answer your question at all, but
you kind of, I think we got a good approximation of kind of what you were getting at there, and I really appreciate it. Rob, you got any closing thoughts?
Oh, not at all. Was there anybody listening with questions, or was it just still Chris?
Yeah, we got a few in there. We had I told you, I said my 7 would be stoked if we did hit 7. So I'm pretty good with that. But plenty more will listen after that. All right, Rob, I got a couple questions to ask you, and then we'll wrap her up. What does liberty look like to you?
I am a freedom advocate, period. Freedom. As long as you are not directly putting someone else, your brother or sister on this world, into immediate danger, then you should be free to do whatever it is you want to do. I always use the examples of helmet laws and seatbelt laws. I don't think I should be forced to wear a seatbelt, but I choose to do so. I shouldn't be forced to wear a helmet on my motorcycle, but I choose to do so. If you choose not to wear a helmet on your motorcycle and you go off a cliff and hit your head on a light pole and die, well, that's on you. That's just natural selection. So it's about making smart choices and decisions regarding your own personal well-being, but you should have the freedom to do that. Nobody should ban shit. Nobody should take anything away from anybody. You live your life, you be you. It's about freedom. If you choose to be some super woke liberal whack job, as long as you're not getting into my space and affecting what my freedoms are, then we can be good friends. I love you. That's great. You carry on. You be you. You can be some super far right freaking rhino Republican whack job, and that's fine as long as you're not implementing things that are going to be in direct opposition to my personal freedoms. So I love the freedom libertarian mindset. That's how I live my life. Unfortunately, there's really nobody out there to take that agenda and carry it properly up the flagpole yet, but maybe we can push towards that.
Yeah, well, I'm definitely hoping that you and I can help foster the culture that brings about those kind of people.
I hope so.
What does health look like to you?
The ability to handle, conquer, and overcome anything that comes into your direct path, and the pursuit of feeling amazing regardless of age. I think the human being, is hardwired genetically to live to be between 120 and 150 years old. I truly believe that, and I think there is actually some compelling research that supports that. But it's just a matter of how many times we get in our own way to peel back those numbers. Now, I'm not talking about getting hit by a truck, but I'm talking about dying of natural causes, whatever that means. It's about being able to sustain as long a life as you can, always being able to do the things that you want to do without hesitation. And as unique as that's becoming in our world, that is what I am pushing for every single day. I will be the 70-year-old guy that's at the park playing with kids going face first down the slide. I will be running around with my grandson and great grandchildren. Nothing's going to keep me out of the gym. Nothing's going to keep me from mowing the fucking lawn. Nothing's going to keep me from carrying bags of chicken food from the truck back to the coop. That's what health is to me. The ability to take on any endeavor that comes in your path and just take it down and being a badass.
Hell yeah. That's probably one of my favorite answers I got. I'm so blessed to have this podcast because I get to talk to wonderful minds like yourself, dude. Where can everybody find you?
robgoodwin.com is the website, and I think every possible way you could ever find me on social media, on the web, and so forth is on that website. There's links to everything, and I'm actually starting a new blog, and the blog is called Hyperprimal, and it is its own website, but there will be a link off of my other website to that. It's hyperprimal.com. And that is literally a blog, an old school freaking blog. You remember those? Remember those days when people had blogs, like they typed their thoughts and shit, and people could read them and say, "Oh, that's what he does." Well, I'm doing that now, so I'm going to start adding pretty much everything I do. I'm going to make a blog post about it, and so people can follow along. So here's me putting on my socks, whatever, but. It's going to be interesting because social media is so short and compacted these days, and nobody gives it any real detail. It's like, look at the picture, read the 140 characters, and move on. So I wanted to be able to throw more out there into the space about what I'm truly doing on a regular basis. And if any of that horse shit sounds like it's even remotely intriguing, then you can kind of follow along. So that's something else I'm working on. But robgoodwin.com is where you can get me on everything. And I would love to have people on board with the new Tier 1 coaching and nutrition program. It is exploding. People seem to really, really like it. And it's probably the most exciting thing I've done in many, many years.
Hell yeah. All right, man. All that stuff will be in the show notes. Everybody that is watching right now, I'm thinking, and I think Rob would be down for it again. Maybe we might do another Rob's of the Apocalypse on In Liberty and Health. I know I had a good time with the last one, and it was, awesome enough that YouTube overlords decided to take it down. If you're here, you're watching this right now, comment and send me messages, send Rob messages, whatever, and we'll see if we can make that happen again.
Rob, this is a cool track record. I've been kicked off of Facebook, finally made my way back. I've been kicked off of Twitter. Like if you go to my Twitter and you see that I've only got 160 followers, that's because I had to come back after being banned from Twitter because I think I called somebody fat. And I've had a YouTube video with a ancestral health legend yanked off. So I am in really good company. I'm really excited. I'm trying to see what boundaries I can push next. We've got to do another one, and we should do some sort of a bet, maybe for a good bottle of bourbon or scotch, as to how many days it takes to get that thing yanked off YouTube.
Well, yeah, that was about, if I remember correctly, about 180 days, which is a complete total shocker to me because I even provided a link to the study. Yeah. That's
a good run. Let's see if we can get that under 30 days.
All right. Yeah. Well, we'll definitely have to try to set that up. So, Rob, as always, it's good to talk to you, brother. And I hope everyone enjoyed. Make sure you check out LMNT either through Rob or through me. We both got affiliates through them. And until next time, everybody, take care.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.